Scientists were attempting to build the world's first time machine. The plan was simple: send one person 300,000 years into the past. Instead, they accidentally sent every human being on Earth. 8 billion people vanished in an instant and reappeared 300,000 years ago, but not in our past. In an alternate Earth, where Homo sapiens never evolved, humanity arrived as the first and only humans to ever exist, and they arrived with nothing. No cities, no technology, no food, no medicine, not even a single phone, only the clothes they happened to be wearing. Civilization disappeared in a fraction of a second. Then the deaths began. Not everyone arrived safely. Over 300,000 years, mountains had formed. Forests had grown, rivers had changed course, and coastlines had shifted. Millions materialized inside solid rock and died instantly. Others appeared inside trees. Some emerged hundreds of meters underwater. Passengers aboard aircraft suddenly found themselves falling from the sky. Across the planet, human bodies rained onto forests, deserts, and grasslands. Within minutes, humanity suffered more deaths than every war in history combined. But the survivors had no way of knowing what happened. One second they were standing in cities. The next, they were surrounded by wilderness. Entire skylines had been replaced by forests. Roads had become rivers. Buildings had become empty air. For a few moments, many believed they were dreaming. Then they noticed something terrifying. Everyone was asking the same question: where did the world go? As panic spread, another realization followed. There would be no rescue, no government, no hospitals, no supply chains, no electricity. The most advanced civilization in history had just become a Stone Age species. And unlike our ancestors, most people had absolutely no idea how to survive. The first night alone would kill millions. The first few hours would be pure chaos. Humanity's greatest strength, civilization, had vanished. And without civilization, 8 billion people suddenly became 8 billion individuals struggling to survive. Most people wouldn't begin by searching for food. They would begin by searching for answers. Families would desperately look for loved ones. Parents would search for missing children. Children would wander through crowds looking for parents who may have appeared hundreds of kilometers away. Entire populations would be psychologically shattered before hunger even became a problem. Then reality would start killing people. Within the first day, millions would die from injuries, exposure, dehydration, drowning, and medical conditions that modern civilization normally keeps under control. Hospitals no longer existed, but neither did the patients inside them. People requiring dialysis, oxygen, insulin, heart medication, or intensive care would begin dying almost immediately. For the first time in centuries, humanity would rediscover something our ancestors knew very well. Nature does not care whether you survive. As the days pass, people would start gathering into groups, not because they trust each other, because being alone is even more dangerous. Small camps would appear near rivers, lakes, and coastlines. Anyone with practical knowledge suddenly becomes incredibly valuable. Doctors, farmers, engineers, construction workers, hunters, military personnel, people who spent their lives doing ordinary jobs would become some of the most important individuals on Earth. Meanwhile, another problem emerges: land. Not every region is equally survivable. Some groups discover fertile river valleys, others find fresh water sources, others control fishing grounds, and almost immediately, conflict begins. Not organized warfare, at least not yet, but fights over food, water, shelter, and territory. Humanity has been thrown into a world with unlimited land. Yet the best land is still limited. and millions of desperate people are competing for it. Within weeks, some camps grow into settlements containing thousands of people. Others collapse completely. Many are wiped out by starvation. Others by violence. Others simply because nobody inside knows how to survive. The first winter becomes a global catastrophe. Modern humans possess modern knowledge, but knowledge alone cannot build houses overnight. Knowledge alone cannot create farms. Knowledge alone cannot feed millions. By the end of the first year, the population crash is unlike anything in history. The real question is no longer whether people will die. The question is, how many will remain? And surprisingly, the answer may be far more than you think, because unlike Stone Age humans, these survivors know something their ancestors never did. They already know how civilization works. They know agriculture, metallurgy, medicine, and mathematics. Humanity has lost its tools, but it has not lost its memory, and that changes everything. The first year would determine whether humanity survives at all. At first, 8 billion people sounds impossible to wipe out, but civilization normally produces billions of meals every day. Now it produces none. The Earth may be empty of humans, but it is not prepared to feed 8 billion hungry mouths overnight. Wild plants are limited. Wild animals are limited. Fresh water is limited in many regions. Most people have never hunted, trapped, farmed, or gathered food. The result is a population crash unlike anything in history. Within the first week, hundreds of millions die. Within the first month, the death toll reaches into the billions. Not because there isn't enough land, because there isn't enough immediate food. Entire settlements disappear. Others survive only because they happen to form near rivers, coastlines, or fertile regions. The first year is especially deadly. Starvation becomes humanity's greatest killer. Disease follows close behind. Not modern diseases, ancient ones, without sanitation systems, clean water, sewage treatment, refrigeration, or antibiotics. Outbreaks spread rapidly through crowded camps. By the end of the first year, humanity may have lost more than half its population. By the end of the first decade, the number could fall even further. Only 1 to 2 billion people might remain, or the number could drop below 1 billion. Every funeral would feel like a library burning down, because each death takes another piece of the old world with it. But extinction is extremely unlikely. There are simply too many survivors spread across too many regions. Somewhere, people will adapt. And once adaptation begins, the collapse starts slowing down. Because unlike every human generation before them, these survivors already know the future. They know farming works. They know metal exists. They know electricity exists. They know engines, chemistry, and medicine are possible. Humanity doesn't need to discover civilization. It only needs to rebuild it. The first permanent settlements would appear surprisingly quickly. Most would form around rivers: the Nile, the Mississippi, the Amazon. The same places that supported civilization in our timeline would become attractive once again. But this time, humanity begins with a massive advantage. Nobody needs to invent agriculture. Farmers already understand farming. Nobody needs to discover irrigation, invent writing, or prove the earth is round. The knowledge survives inside human minds. Within a few years, organized farming begins. Within decades, large towns emerge. Within a century, some regions may already contain cities. The biggest challenge is not knowledge. It is infrastructure. Knowing how to build a steel factory is very different from actually building one. To make steel, you need tools. To make tools, you need metal. To produce metal, you need mines. To operate mines, you need equipment. Civilization must rebuild its entire technological ladder from the bottom up. But every step is accelerated by existing knowledge. Humanity is essentially speed-running its own history. What originally took thousands of years may now take only generations. And this creates a fascinating possibility. The second civilization may advance faster than the first one ever did, because this time, humanity already knows where it is going. The first question most people ask is simple. How long would it take humanity to rebuild modern civilization? The answer is probably much less than 300,000 years. In fact, it may be less than 1,000. The reason is simple. Humanity is not starting from zero. It is starting with billions of living textbooks. The first generation would focus almost entirely on survival, farming, shelter, water, basic tools. The second generation inherits something even more valuable than land: knowledge. Parents would spend enormous effort teaching children everything they know about the lost world. Schools would appear long before modern cities, because everyone understands that knowledge is now civilization's most important resource. Within a few decades, survivors would already be mining metals. Within a century, large-scale agriculture and organized states would likely dominate many regions. By 2 or 3 centuries, some societies could reach technology levels similar to the 18th or 19th century: steam engines, factories, railroads, mass production. But unlike our ancestors, they already know what comes next. Scientists would not spend centuries debating whether germs exist. Engineers would not need to rediscover electricity. Physicists already know about atoms. Chemists already understand the periodic table. Entire scientific fields could be rebuilt far faster than they originally developed. The biggest obstacle would not be science. It would be manufacturing. Every machine needed to build the next machine must first be rebuilt. Civilization cannot skip steps. Microchips still require factories. Factories require precision tools. Precision tools require industrial infrastructure. The technological ladder must still be climbed, just much faster. Modern technology could return within roughly 300 to 800 years. Some regions may achieve it sooner. Others may take longer, but eventually electricity returns. Then radio, then computers, then satellites, then the internet. Humanity would watch its lost world slowly reappear. Except this time, history unfolds differently. The second civilization would not resemble our own. The survivors remember exactly what happened to the first one. They remember the day civilization vanished, the day billions died, the day humanity learned how fragile its world truly was. That memory would shape every future society. Children would grow up hearing stories about the lost world, a mythical age where people crossed oceans in hours, spoke instantly across continents, walked on the moon. Many of those stories would sound impossible, almost magical. Yet, unlike myths, these stories are true. Entire libraries of knowledge would be reconstructed from memory. Universities would dedicate themselves to preserving information before it could be forgotten. The first generation of survivors would become some of the most important people in history, not because of their wealth, but because they are the last people who actually remember the old world. As decades pass, those living witnesses begin dying, one by one. Taking countless pieces of knowledge with them, humanity would race against time to preserve everything before it is lost forever. But there is one advantage this new humanity possesses that the original civilization never had: resources. 300,000 years ago, the planet is untouched. No depleted oil fields, exhausted mines, deforestation, polluted rivers, or overcrowded cities. The survivors inherit an entire planet full of untouched resources. Iron deposits remain untouched. Coal seams remain untouched. Rare metals remain untouched. Humanity gets a second chance with a fully stocked Earth. For centuries, growth would likely be explosive. Population would recover. Cities would expand. Technology would accelerate. Eventually, humanity would reach a familiar milestone: the space age. But this time something changes. Astronauts looking down at Earth would not see a world shaped by thousands of years of history. They would see a civilization that remembers exactly where it came from. A civilization that knows it was given a second chance. And perhaps that knowledge changes everything. Because unlike the first civilization, this one knows exactly how close humanity came to extinction. And then comes the strangest question of all. Eventually, the new civilization rediscovers advanced physics. It rebuilds particle accelerators, quantum computers, artificial intelligence, and perhaps centuries later, it rebuilds the very machine that caused all of this: the time machine. Imagine standing inside that future laboratory, knowing that your entire civilization exists because of a catastrophic accident. Would you dare turn the machine on again? Would you risk repeating history? Or would humanity finally decide that some doors should remain closed forever? Because somewhere in the distant future, a scientist is preparing to activate a time machine. And if history repeats itself, humanity may once again wake up in a world where civilization has vanished overnight. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded.